Tonight's interview is with Dr. Tammy Domanski. She is the director of the Environmental Center at Arundel Community College. She is the scientific director of Operation Clearwater that provides all of the procedural guidance and scientific analysis of the data collected from water samples around our region. And she's an associate professor. So she is a very, very busy person, and we're really lucky to have her here tonight. So Dr. Domanski, come on in. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
So first off, I read off your introduction, and that can sound, I think, a little bit overwhelming to students. So just tell us a little bit about what you do. So what is your job, and what's the work that you actually do?
Okay. My primary job at AACC is to be a biology professor. So I teach general biology, sometimes genetics, microbiology, and then I've been very fortunate to be allowed to do work with the Environmental Center. So that work involves water quality monitoring mostly, and a lot of our work happens during the summer months. So to complement the work that the county does, taking water samples and making sure that there's not bacterial contamination, we collect samples that are requested by places like the Spa Creek Conservancy, communities around the county, and even the Department of Public Works. And we test the water to make sure that there's not contamination from human or animal, or even sometimes bird feces, to make sure the water is safe. In addition, we spend some time doing other tests on the water to test for levels of nutrients. Many students in school hear about high nutrient content is bad for underwater plants, for marine life. So as fertilizer runs into the water or detergents, it can increase those levels of nutrients, which cause algae to overgrow. So we also do projects like that. So in the summer, mostly in the summer months, sometimes in the fall and winter, I get to work with a handful of students and former students helping me out and doing these projects.
So you, even though you're a professor, you work a lot in the summertime, it sounds like.
Yes, I'm around year. We say we're around year round. So yeah, that's a lot of rounds. But yes, most of what we do starts April to May, and we try to concentrate things into midweek. But we also like to find out what happens because of rain, and rain doesn't pay attention to our schedule. So we try to be really flexible in the summer to do a lot of those studies. And it works well for students too. We have a number of students that are looking for either part-time jobs or to volunteer, or even internships to fit into their summer break.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how much time do you spend outside? Because it sounds like if you're doing water sampling, this could be a lot of outside time.
So we're fortunate that we get to spend time inside in the lab and out in the field. So it makes a nice mix. Now on 99-degree days with 100% humidity, it's not always great to be outside, but we do get a chance to go to, beaches all over the county. So I think, unless I didn't grow up in this area, and until I started doing this work, I was not even aware how much beach, or I should say coastline along the rivers that we have in the county. I've learned more about the county by doing this work than I ever knew before that. In the 8 years I lived here before I started doing this, I had no idea how much water there is, how much access there is. So we get to do sampling from the shore. And when we're really lucky, we get to go out on either a motorboat or in a kayak to do some sampling from midstream. So we do get to get outside about anywhere between a third and half of the time, depending on the week.
Gotcha. So what would you say your average day looks like? Do you have an average day, or is there an average week? Like what does it actually look like?
That's another nice thing about having the teaching part of my life and the environmental center part of my life. Things vary, which is very nice. During the semester when I'm teaching, when we're not doing any sampling, I have a much more regular schedule. I get out, COVID's made everything unusual. So let's pretend it's when we used to go to school. So, get up, go to school, have class, have office hours, meetings, and then maybe every week squeeze in a couple of hours to do field work or to do a little bit of lab work. I also get to have several students that work with me throughout the year doing small projects. But in the summer, it all changes. There's more flexibility. Mondays and Tuesdays, we have a lot of flexibility. A lot of our out in the field work is Wednesdays and Thursdays. Get up early, maybe stop in the lab, coordinate with everyone else, grab coolers, poles, bottles, everything we need, and then go do the rounds around the county for about half a day, and then make it into the lab and spend 2 to 3 hours then processing samples, getting things ready for the next day, and also reporting data. That becomes part of it for people that love data, right? There's a lot of data reporting, a lot of number crunching. For people that don't like data, someone else does that. So we get some of that also. But with changes with different organizations asking us to do work, that's where we get the variation. That's where people get to change up what they do. And in addition, do some side work that's unusual for some other projects, because there's some other really interesting projects in the Environmental Center that are run by Paul Bushman and Susan Lamont. So some of our students are going out at the full moon to down by Solomon's Island to survey, to count horseshoe crabs, because every year Paul Bushman does a horseshoe crab survey. We also have a big project for underwater grasses, SAV as they're called, which are as important to water quality and clarity as oysters, but don't get as much attention. So there are really neat projects going out and surveying, looking for fields of underwater grasses, and then even collecting the grasses, collecting seeds, and trying to reestablish underwater grass fields. So, you know, we have a lot of variety in the summer, which is really nice.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. So out of all those things, what's your favorite part?
Oh, that's hard. I think a lot of it depends on the week. You know, I'm not in the summer now, but I still have some small projects going on. So every 2 weeks, I go to 2 locations in the county and do water quality. I have to, you know, put my waders on and go out in the water and measure some parameters. 2 weeks ago, it was the most beautiful, gorgeous morning. It was the best part of my week. Today it was foggy and chilly and drizzly, and it was not the best part of my week. So getting back into the lab was my favorite part of today. So it varies. Once upon a time, years ago, I would have said lab work was my very favorite thing. I love the detail of it. But now, in good weather, going out in the field is my favorite part.
Do you have a least favorite part? Is there something about your job that you really dislike?
Data, statistics. They're very useful. They're very necessary. But this is where I make the comment that as students, statistics is a class, when you get to high school, statistics is a class that will always serve you. Life ends up turning into many, many statistics. And so I think that's why it's become my least favorite, is because trying to learn it later in life instead of having a good foundation earlier on, that I feel like I'm always behind on it. So very useful, very necessary. It's the best way to communicate data to people. But I struggle with it. It's still hard for me.
Well, then that's good advice for all the students out there, is take stats and take it early.
Yeah.
What could you talk just a little bit about what was your path to your current career?
Well, I started, it's convoluted. So when I went to college a long, long time ago, that's when DNA manipulation and molecular biology was a new field, which really dates me. And so that was very exciting to me. So I really very quickly transitioned into wanting to do work with DNA and molecular biology. And when I left undergraduate, I knew right away that I wanted to go to graduate school, and I wanted to pursue something similar. And in graduate school, I moved into sort of genetics in bacteria. I love microorganisms. I love bacteria. And kind of progressed then through postgraduate training to do some work with not just DNA, but proteins, kind of working my way through molecules. And then I was at the Naval Academy for several years and did bacterial work. We were looking for infectious bacteria around the yard. That's when drug-resistant Staphylococcus aureus was the big concern with athletes. and I really enjoyed that. I also taught chemistry at the Naval Academy, which was, I love chemistry, but it was not my favorite thing to teach. I wanted to move more biological, and I just had the opportunity to start teaching at AACC. I initially started part-time because I was deciding what I wanted to be when I grew up at that point. And the opportunity came to become full-time, and just took the opportunities that I found. No one was really teaching some of the classes I love, like genetics and molecular biology. So I developed those classes. And then Dr. Sally Horner, who used to run the bacterial Operation Clearwater, had approached me because of my interest in microorganisms. And I had a strong interest in the environment and taking care of it, but I had never really found a way to make that work in my career. Even at the Naval Academy, we had started looking for bacteria in the environment, but it wasn't the same type of bacteria that we do in water testing. So when Sally Horner approached me, it was the perfect opportunity to learn sort of as an apprentice to her for several years before she retired. And then it's been learning just through interactions with her and other professionals in the field. Every chance I get to talk to individuals, to attend conferences, this has been my favorite part of my career so far, is being able to take what I learned in the past and really apply it to what I do now. And then we get to do some neat side projects. Some of the things I haven't mentioned is even with the horseshoe crabs, where we go out and survey them. Now we take samples of their DNA and we're trying to track their relationships between the horseshoe crabs. So it's kind of bringing it all together, and I get little bits of everything I like.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. So thinking about, your path, and all the things that sort of brought you to where you are today, what are maybe some skills that you think are really important, and that lead to you being successful?
Flexibility was a big one, being flexible. And I would say a really big part of finding out eventually what you want to do is to be open to opportunities that you didn't know were there, and take advantage of, in a good way, the connections you have. A lot of people, even when they're young, have this idea that, I want to go my own way and I'm going to do it all on my own. Don't burn the bridges that you have, because you might find that they're very useful. And as far as school goes, try, when you're young, when you're really young, take the time and really try a little bit of everything. And the first time around, you might not like it, right? A common thing we hear from kids is, I don't like math. It's a very common thing right now. There's math and science, but a lot of courses, a lot of topics feel very different when you're applying them to something. So give everything another try. If you're not sure if you like it or not, the second time around could be a lot different. That's how I felt about math, and even science. It can feel very intimidating, but there are many different types of sciences. So if you don't like one type of science, try another. There are lots of types of science.
Yeah, definitely. What skills do you think are important for an environmental scientist to have?
Attention to detail is good. Again, some math skills, and I'm not talking about higher level calculus here, but I think we all use math more on a daily basis than we realize.
Absolutely.
It's just when we put the terminology to it, we're always solving for some unknown in math, but when we call it algebra, everyone gets afraid. And if not a love of math, the ability to find out those that can help you. So I would say that's a big thing, is the willingness to reach out to learn more from others. Environmental science right now, especially, is a huge field, and it still feels very much like we're finding our way through how to correctly measure things. So it's all about contacts. Everything. When I first got into science, I pictured it as like working in my little corner by myself and not having to interact with anyone. Every field you go into now, you really want to make those connections and work with other people. I'd say that is the biggest skill for any field.
Any other sort of suggestions in terms of extracurriculars that you might recommend that kids try out or take advantage of um,
Um,
for environmental science?
there are a lot of programs now out there, and this, isn't, whether it's a recreational program, whether it is things like kids in college at AACC, there are a number of environmental classes there. Even when you get into when you get into high school, and I think it's even starting to move down to the middle school, that they're starting to introduce classes right in school, uh, electives that relate to environmental science. There are lots of ways you can volunteer. If you live near any body of water, Spa Creek, Severn River, South River, Magathie River, there is an organization out there that's working to improve the quality. Um, whether they do it on their own, or if you ask a parent or to look it up for you, there are websites and there are always volunteer opportunities, whether it's to do plantings, to go out and kayak and look for underwater grasses. There are just so many ways and so many organizations that you can get involved in now.
That's a really great suggestion, to look for volunteer opportunities, because I think not only does it give you a chance to learn about environmental science, but it also it's fun. It
Yeah.
gives back to your community, and it really gives you a good sense of what the work could be like. And it sounds like doing very similar things to what you actually do on a daily basis.
Yep, yeah, they do. When we have volunteers, no matter how old or young, going out into the field, collecting samples, making those measurements. There are lots of those activities that, we involve everyone, every age group in that's interested in helping out.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Domanski, for joining us tonight and talking a little bit about what it takes to be an environmental scientist and a little bit about your path to get there. So thank you so much again. Um, and I'm curious to see more of the work and how it impacts this area around. So it's a really interesting topic. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.